Welcome to Progress Uncluttered. We promote shared understanding of the fundamentals of human progress. Go to progressuncluttered.com where you can subscribe, comment on this episode, and access our archive for every episode. Also go to codesearch.com to contribute your insights. Links are in the show notes. Our email address is info@progressuncluttered.com. We would love to hear from you. Coming up in this episode, the way forward in Niger in the aftermath of the coup, with Chris Oshewalo and James Okpare for Progress Uncluttered. Now to the episode. First, key events so far.
On the 26th of July, there was a coup by the military junta in Niger, and in the quest to actually dispose the sitting president Mohamed Bazoum, and that has led to a lot of issues around the country and involvement from other countries and from other bloc and unions such as the ECOWAS, and it's also been supported by a lot of the people within the country itself. On the 8th of August, the ECOWAS started a lot of diplomacy talks and mediation talks between Niger and other members of the ECOWAS, and to try to bring a resolution to this crisis, which hasn't really taken any fruit yet. But hopefully something would be done in few weeks or months to come.
Mediation by ECOWAS.
So far, not so successful. I think the military junta in Niger has taken over the whole country, which is a very huge land space country, and it's been hard for the ECOWAS currently because a lot of members of the ECOWAS are facing a lot of financial and economical and other type of security issues. Nigeria and Ghana having high inflation and currency devaluation, which is affecting the capacity at which they could fund the military program to actually be part of having something to do within Niger. And so far, it hasn't been so successful. I think Niger currently, I don't think they want involvement from the ECOWAS. They've made their stance clear that they don't want involvement from the ECOWAS. And further on it, they also don't want involvement from the West, such as France and the United States. These are the issues happening on ground.
Conditions that led to the coup.
I think the first condition would be high-spread poverty in the country. Niger is one of the poorest countries in Africa and one of the poorest countries in the world. And the disparity is that Niger has a lot of resources. It sits in the middle Sahara belt, which has high potential for energy production, such as solar energy. And not just that, Niger is one of the places with the highest number of uranium concentration in the world, and which they've been a net exports to France and other parts of Europe, but mostly France. So Niger is a big deal for France. But so far, Niger has been a very poor country. I think the people generally are not happy for that widespread poverty, despite foreign aid, despite exporting uranium and other things to neighboring countries and foreign countries like France. And it hasn't really trickled down within the society in terms of GDP growth, GDP per capita growth, and trade generally in the country.
The role of terrorism in the Sahel region.
So terrorism in the Sahel region is a major concern for every West African countries, not just West African, but also North African countries. And that is actually the involvement of Al-Qaeda and ISIS within that region. And majorly, Niger is one of the breeding ground for terrorism currently, because if you could recall, Niger has border with Nigeria, and for the past 10, 13 years in Nigeria, there's been widespread terrorism and terrorist attack. So they've been also in their way in Niger also, and attacking a lot of villages in Niger, and that has been around for a long time. Niger has had 5 military coups since they got independence, and 3 military coups after 2010, which is around the time terrorism started taking fold in Niger. So I think the people there are really concerned, the military is really concerned, and they feel they don't really have a lot of support from the democratic president that just got overthrown in their response to fighting terrorism.
Security risks from reliance on mercenaries.
The Wagner Group is a foreign mercenary from Russia that got hired to basically help fight terrorism in that region. And not just in Niger, terrorism in that sub-Saharan region is spread across Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Chad, Somalia, and I think a little bit of Ethiopia. The involvement of the Wagner Group is even adding more to the geopolitical risks globally.
The precedents of coups in the region.
Yeah, there've been a coup in Burkina Faso last year and late last year, and there've been other coups. I think a coup in Mali and a lot of civilian crises in Mali and Burkina Faso, and the involvement of coups there has actually emboldened the Niger army to actually do the same thing. And actually that could also embolden other countries in that region to also do the same thing that are very fragile with their democracy currently, because a lot of countries in West Africa currently are facing high inflation and widespread poverty, which could actually embolden the military to actually take over and impose their own either military government or a controlled democratic government by the military. So obviously other coups in different countries around Niger has emboldened the Niger army to do the same thing.
The way forward.
The first thing to resolve here would be the coup, the military coup and the crisis. Either is for Niger to independently craft their paths and have a military control government, or we could have a more balanced approach with ECOWAS trying to bring peace via different channels, like trade and other things that could actually help poverty alleviation in Niger. Because that is actually the main roots of the problem. It's that there's widespread poverty in Niger. So at the end of the day, you first of all have to solve the coup and bring stability and peace in that region before you can actually talk about poverty alleviation and economic development. Niger has to find a way to resolve its sanctions, financial sanctions such as aids and transaction abilities. And that has to, restore confidence first before we can proceed to talking about development, economic development and all.
Plausibility of military intervention.
So concerning military intervention, it can be very tricky because some members of the ECOWAS, such as Burkina Faso and Mali, are not in support of ECOWAS as a whole military intervention in Niger. They are stating to defend Niger if such case happen. But that could actually mean vulnerability in their own region because they're also facing their own political and military crisis. So the ECOWAS at the end of the day has a good chance, a good shot to solve that within their own means. They did that in, I think, Gambia some years ago, which was a pretty landlocked country, and they didn't have any chance of the ECOWAS had more chance of successfully intervening in that region, and they did successfully intervene in that region. But Niger is a very big country, and they also have support from Russia, which is a pretty important military player globally. It could be very tricky for the ECOWAS, but there's also possibilities of them successfully handling this by themselves.
Closing thought.
We can always determine the starting point of a war, of a crisis, but not the ending. It's at the foundational stage like this that is the most crucial to make it shorter, when things has not really escalated. The coming days ahead are very crucial in the future of Niger.
Your part. What is the plausible path forward for Niger? Have your say on Call Sesh or in the comment section. This has been Progress Uncluttered. Comment, like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notification to stay engaged. For more, go to progressuncluttered.com where you can comment on this episode. Also go to callsesh.com to contribute your insights to this and other conversations. Links are in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Until next time, be well.